Central New Jersey. I'm also a member of the AJC Board of Governors, and I am your MC for the evening. So I wanted to... There are a lot of people to thank for pulling this whole rally together. And I'm going to actually let someone else do the thank yous with one exception.
You're lying, correct?
And that is to thank each and every one of you. You guys are amazing for turning out tonight. There are countless numbers of places that you guys can be on an absolutely gorgeous Thursday evening, and you chose to be here with us. Thank you so much. You know, anti-Semitism isn't just a Jewish problem, and I'm so happy to see so many of our friends from the community here to support us as well. You know that when Jews are targeted, just like when any minority is targeted, it's an assault on all of us. It's an assault on our democratic principles and our pluralistic values, and for that reason, we all have to stand shoulder to shoulder together. I want you to know that nobody takes your presence here for granted. We are so grateful that you are all here. So again, thank you. And with that, I am going to introduce our first speaker, Jerry Newman, who is the president of the Jewish Federation, Princeton, Mercer Bus.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. On a beautiful Thursday afternoon. And on behalf of the Board of Directors, can you hear me in the back, of the local Jewish Federation and our entire Jewish community, thank you one and all for coming out for a very, very important reason to literally stand against anti-Semitism and Jew hatred. Take a look at the signs. We appreciate it. Today is a very, very unique day. In fact, this is the first time that our local Jewish community has ever held a public rally to address the threat of anti-Semitism. Two important questions: why are we here, and why are we here now? First off, we're here because the Bill of Rights under the Constitution gives certain freedoms to all of us. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. This is a lot more freedom and rights that many of our ancestors going back 2, 3, 4 generations had in Europe and other parts of the world where they were living at the time. And as we remember our history, not always things turn out well. However, in America, things have been and will continue to be better overall. To the second question, why now? The why we're here now is, unfortunately, as you heard from Lori, we are finding ourselves facing a lot of bullies spewing vicious anti-Jewish hatred at us, including right here in greater Princeton, including in our Princeton schools and our universities. And this makes all of us want to stand up and politely but firmly push back against this. Let's hear it. Push back. Push back. So again, a special thank you for everyone in attendance, and particularly to our school students and their families for coming out. As I said to our student speakers, they're going to be on this planet, God willing, to close to 100 years old, which is upwards of 80-some years. They're going to have to handle this for a lot longer than us. We support you, the students, and all the other students more in all respects. We are here for you. You are not alone. You are not alone. As I said, you're going to hear from the local students and university students on the front line of the fight against anti-Semitism. You're also going to hear from our elected officials. We have Mayor Frieda here and other elected officials. Senator Linda Greenstein is with us. We have local clergy from various faith communities. They'll all be introduced. We have anti-bias educational professionals here, Jewish communal professionals with expertise in opposing anti-Semitism, and other community leaders. I'm going to close with a number of thank yous. A very important thank you. First to the Princeton Police Department. Thank you, officers. I see you on all sides. Thank you for protecting us and for keeping everyone safe today. And to the town of Princeton, and again to Mayor Frieda for the opportunity to have this event. Secondly, to the event sponsors that were listed on the invitation, in addition to the Jewish Federation and the local Jewish Community Relations Council. I'm going to read real fast. the American Jewish Committee, Stand With Us, IAC 36, Jewish Community Foundation of Greater Mercer, JCC, Jewish Community Center of Princeton, Mercer, Bucks, and Abrams, Day Camp, Jewish Family Children's Service, CJL, the Center for Jewish Life, Princeton University, and thank you, I saw Rabbi Roth before, Adif Israel, our synagogues, Adif Israel Congregation, Rabbi Adler, Beth El Synagogue, Rabbi Hornsgold Congregation, Beth Chaim, our Sinai Temple, Temple Micah, and the Jewish Center of Princeton. With special thanks to many other organizations that hosted our invite, including the Not in Our Town, Princeton. Another thank you to all the speakers, and Lori's going to introduce them. And lastly, in terms of thank yous, very, very important, to the Rally Steering Committee. The 10 members of this steering committee, they're all wearing the dark blue t-shirts. I'm going to read their name in alphabetical order. Hold your applause to the end. Rabbi Ben Adler, Stacy Bilo, Shari Blecker, Barak Bar Cohen, Brian Shevlin, Dan Herskovici, Brett Jacknow, Paula Jaffe, Kim Marks, and Carly Masia for their hard work and dedication in making this possible in only a 10-day time frame to plan. And special recognition to our Executive Director, Mark Merkovitz, for his staff leadership on this project. Mark, where are you? Right over here. They've been working day and night, as I said. In closing, I want to quote a passage from Ethics of Our Fathers. You are, quote, "You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." Lori, thank you again, and back to you. Where are you, Lori?
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, guys, welcome. Will you please help me welcome our next speaker, Andrew Gross, Executive Director of the New Jersey Israel Commission. Andrew?
Afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to tell you how thrilled I am to be here. And thank you so much to all the students who are out here this afternoon. It's really wonderful to see you all so enthusiastic. We've heard the thanks before, but Mark at Jewish Federation here, thank you so much. Of course, Senator Greenstein, great to see you. Assemblyman D'Angelo, great to see you as well. Rabbi David Levy from AJC, Shari Blecker, thank you so much for inviting me. And of course, our friends in the Princeton Police Department who are out here, if we can thank them as well for being out here this afternoon. Thank you so much. I oversee the New Jersey Israel Commission on behalf of the New Jersey Department of State. I oversee our state's relations with Israel. And I want to just begin by saying that today is a reminder that we need to continue speaking out against anti-Semitism. In recent weeks, we have been reminded of what we all know. Anti-Semitism and hate crimes are a threat to our society. We need to come together. We need to come together today and always to fight this. The Jewish community should never be afraid to express themselves, should never be afraid to express who they are, their beliefs. No one should feel this way. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate the fact that today is actually an interfaith gathering, because we need to stand together, all of our communities, and we need to unite to denounce anti-Semitism in one voice. There is zero room for discrimination here in the state of New Jersey, and we should take pride in our diversity, and we have to respect one another, even if we disagree. Governor Murphy and his entire administration have been crystal clear. When we see hate, when we see anti-Semitism, we will speak up. We will not be silent. And hate will never have a place or a home in the great state of New Jersey. So, as I said, I oversee our relations, our very special relations, our special relationship with the state of Israel, one of our most important allies. And I know how much Israel means to so many people here. And despite challenging times that we are in, our friendship with Israel is robust. It reflects the spirit of so much of our Jewish community, and it's a relationship that is built on peace, on tolerance, and frankly on great benefits that it brings to both of our states, and especially here in the Garden State, and we should be so proud of that relationship. So I want to end by thanking you all. Thank you so much for having me here. And again, New Jersey stands together against anti-Semitism. New Jersey stands against hate. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I wish you guys in the back could see what I'm seeing up here in the front. But you guys with all these awesome signs, Jewish and proud, never again, hold your signs up and turn around, show them to everybody in the back so they can see too. You guys are awesome. Andrew, thank you for those remarks. Our next speaker is going to be Ying Liu. Ying is the president of the Princeton Middle School Parents Association. Please join me in welcoming Ying to the stage.
Sorry, apologies. I'm shorter than average people here. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's great to see so many young people here. And my message is really for the sake of you guys. I'm here as a mother, as an active member of Princeton Middle School PTO, and a member of the Princeton community. I'm here to show my support to the Jewish community and against anti-Semitism. Thank you. So just only 2 months ago, I was standing in the same place, attending another anti-hate rally, the Princeton Anti-Asian Hate Rally. And through the past years, many Asian Americans have experienced rising anti-Asian sentiments and hate incidents. But it was not until the headlines appeared of elderly people being killed on the streets and female service workers were shot until this problem began to enter public's consciousness. So I'm here, today I'm calling people's attention to the rising anti-Semitism. And we can't afford to wait until similar headlines appear again to realize the danger of any forms of hatred and xenophobia. And So the diversity of myriad different culture and heritage in this country is what makes this country unique and strong. But despite our great diversity, the U.S. has seen devastating examples of othering throughout the history. When we even look at recent events, we know that hate and othering are never far away. Today, we're still battling with racism, in particular, systematic injustice against blacks, anti-Asian hate, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, and transphobia, and anti-immigration. And this list can go on and on. And just before I came here, I read the news about Princeton University reported finding a noose on campus. So what kind of message should we send to our kids who are growing up in an increasingly diverse world? Do we teach them to resent and hate when encountering differences? Or do we teach our children to love and show them the opportunities in learning about people who are different from themselves? For the sake of our children, we should demonstrate our open-mindedness and always be ready to learn with empathy and think deeply with the equity-centered mindfulness. Only then can we hope to head toward the world that is compassionate, filled with love and respect to all. Starting at middle school, children become more self-aware and start to ask existential questions of themselves and ask who they are as individuals. According to developmental psychologists Erik Erikson and James Marshall, between 12 and 18 years old is the most important time for people to develop and explore their self-identity, which has profound long-term impact on one's social, emotional well-being. For this important reason, we must make sure that a school are a safe space for all children, for them to feel confident and proud of who they are. On that note, let's all be advocates for the sake of our children so that they can live in the world with the absence of anti-Semitism and all forms of oppression and discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you. Ying, thank you for those important words, and we are proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with you too. It is important that we speak to our children, and I'm so glad to see so many of you guys here. Our next speaker is one of Jewish community of Princeton's longtime and closest friends, Reverend Dave Davis, who is the pastor of the Nassau Presbyterian Church.
Good evening, friends. I stand before you tonight in honor of and in the memory of my dearest friend, Rabbi Adam Feldman. It feels like it was not that long ago. On one Shabbat morning, I was working in my office preparing for my sermon for the next day, and my phone started to ping, and it was reporting, the news was reporting of the horrible, horrific murders at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. I left my office and I drove. It was a little later now when services would have been finished at the Jewish Center, and I drove right to the rabbi's house, and we sat and watched the news together for the next hour or so. And we decided that we would organize a prayer vigil, and I said to him, where should we host it? And he said, of course we should host it at your church, because anti-Semitism is not a Jewish issue. And within 24 hours, the next Sunday evening, we had more than 800 people inside the sanctuary of Nassau Church singing and praying for the end of anti-Semitism, hate, and violence. After the horrible murders at the Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina, it was Rabbi Feldman who had the idea that members of our congregations should all go and worship with the historic African American churches in our community. And that Sunday, folks from all different faiths went and worshiped with our African American neighbors. When there was a horrible anti-Semitic social media thread coming out of Princeton High School years ago, and the principal called Rabbi Feldman, it was Rabbi Feldman who arranged for a Holocaust survivor to go and speak to a filled and hushed auditorium at Princeton High School. I say all of this because I miss him, and I came to events like this with him. And when I knelt up on Palmer Square on the prayer vigil after the murder of George Floyd, and I knelt for more than 8 minutes, it should have been more than 9 minutes, and I knelt there, I felt Adam Feldman kneeling next to me. Because Adam Feldman taught me that anti-Semitism is not a Jewish issue. And so I rise before you, and to the young people, I want you to know that when my children were born, and I watched my children grow up, they are now 27 and 30 years old, I deluded myself, and I want to confess to the young people here today that I was convincing myself that my children's generation would do better. And this is the moment when that illusion came crashing down. In Charlottesville, when the white nationalists marched on Charlottesville with anti-Semitism and hate, and you looked at how young those people were. And I want to let you know, young people, that folks like us have been marching and standing together to fight against hatred and violence and anti-Semitism for generations. And we will continue to do it with you and your generation, and we will continue to do it until we don't need rallies like this anymore. And so, I continue to commit myself to this work, to speaking out for peace and against hatred and against anti-Semitism, even when it is stoked by the elected officials in our land. We will still speak out for peace and for justice. And I leave you with the words of the Hebrew prophet Micah. What does the Lord require of us? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. Thank you.
Reverend Davis, on behalf of all of us here who remember Adam so fondly, thank you for bringing him into this rally and for honoring his memory with your words. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Our next speaker is my very good friend and tireless advocate for improving the lives of kids in our community. Lynn Zarkey is the founder and the executive director of KidsBridge and the author of a recently published book, The Empathy Advantage: Coaching Children to Be Kind, Respectful, and Successful. Lynn?
Woo. How are we doing out there tonight? Technically this afternoon. Thank you for coming out. This is such an important issue. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I am director of KidsBridge. We educate 2,200 kids in New Jersey every year in bullying prevention, diversity appreciation, and anti-bias. We used to call anti-bias diversity appreciation, but now we can claim it anti-bias, anti-racism. We follow the research, and I think you should too. Research tells us we are a nation of bystanders. As Jews, we have become accustomed to expressions and acts of anti-Semitism directed against ourselves, our children, and other children. When we see bias or bullying, some of us, we're scared. We don't want to get involved. We want somebody else to fix it, and we are unpracticed. We tell our children, don't make a fuss and don't call attention to yourself. These responses are not working. They actually encourage more bias, more hatred, and intolerance to grow, to thrive in schools, colleges, and our communities. Research also tells us that bullying and cyberbullying are growing, especially the last 4 years, for Jews, Muslims, Asians, LGBT, and others. When do we decide to react to bias differently? When do we claim for our children and role model pushing against anti-Semitism and anti-bias? It's time for a paradigm shift right now. Even though we live amongst bystanders, we can choose not to be bystanders, but be upstanders. How many of you have heard the word upstanders? Okay, we need more upstanders in our community where we choose to stand up and speak out with practice. When we decide to stand up and speak out, we role model for our children that everyone of any color, of any religion, deserves to be respected. So let's make a choice today, right now, to do things differently. Let's discuss with our children, face to face, the world of bias and anti-Semitism. Let's inspire our kids to demand respect and kindness for every human being, regardless of their skin color, regardless of their religion, no matter what country they come from, what clothes they wear, and what food they eat. With 18 years of anti-bias education under my belt, I have learned that conversations about anti-bias and anti-Semitism start way too late. We have to start earlier. Right now, KidsBridge is teaching anti-bias strategies to 4 and 5 years old. Yes, we need to start earlier so it's not a problem later. I implore you in your homes and in your schools earlier. In my book, thank you, Lori, The Empathy Advantage, I highlight one of the most important tools for us today, empathy. Do you know that empathy is declining? This is the bad news. Here's the good news. Empathy can be taught. People think, oh, you're born with what you're born with. Empathy can be taught. It can be taught and measured in young children. So with stronger social emotional skills, we can use empathy to be one of the most powerful tools against anti-Semitism and anti-bias. If we act now, starting today, we can improve the future for all of our children, reduce bias, prejudice, and ultimately anti-Semitism. I think we can get started right now. So here's your homework. Tonight, go home, whatever your family is, face-to-face. Tools are active listening, and also start a family plan. Children, 5 years old and up, of any age, can work together to create a family plan to make a contribution to eliminate anti-Semitism. And oh, by the way, this community, which you see here right now, is working for you to create even more effective, strategic, powerful resources to help you with anti-Semitism. Thank you for standing up, speaking out. Where are my upstanders? I can't hear you. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Lynn, thank you. Always an inspiration, and not to be outdone, of course, by our very inspiring next group of speakers who are student upstanders. Let's give them a hand. These three students are going to share some personal thoughts and experiences with us, so please join me in welcoming Gabe Silverstein, a rising 11th grader from PHS. Gabe, just 1 second. I'm going to introduce all of you, and then you can go ahead and speak. Also, Hayden Meja, a recent graduate from PDS and a rising college student. And Seth Wolenski, a rising senior at Princeton University. Just one more thing. As you guys are taking pictures, if you are going to post them with the hashtag #EndJewHatred. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabe Silverstein. I'm a rising junior at Princeton High School. Yeah. I would like to take this opportunity to offer my perspective as a Jewish student in Princeton. After almost 16 years living in this town and being in the public school system, there are a number of things that I've noticed. The school system in our town does an extremely good job teaching students how to be accepting of different minorities, including the Black community, the Hispanic community, the LGBT community, the Asian community, and the Muslim community, among others. For this, I applaud our school system. Unfortunately, what the school system fails to teach students about is anti-Semitism, which is more prevalent in our community and country now than ever. According to a recent FBI hate crime statistics report, Jewish people are the targets of over 60% of bias-related hate crimes. According to the same study, a Jewish person is 3 times more likely to experience a hate crime than an African American and 13 times more likely than Hispanic Americans. I believe it is this lack of education, coupled with anti-Semitic social media posts spread to billions of people, that brings us to this day. Apart from reading one book about the Holocaust in school, I have not witnessed any other lesson, conversation, or even mention of struggles that the Jewish people have faced throughout history and face today. As a rising sophomore last summer, it was mandatory that every student read Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, the host of The Daily Show. The purchase of this book, the support of this author, is helping and encouraging a powerful anti-Semite. The school is requiring students to support an active anti-Semite who will continue to promote anti-Semitic falsehoods through his platforms. 3 Fridays ago, a friend, Max Blecker, and I observed the Pro-Palestine Rally held right here. We wanted to observe what a pro-Palestine rally would look like. It was immediately evident that the rally that was supposed to be peaceful was filled with hate towards the Jewish people in their homeland. There was no mention of peace. There was a call for the destruction of the Jewish homeland and hateful cries against Jewish people. This was an aggressive and very scary day for me. Jew haters holding signs calling my friend and me a Nazi. A Nazi. After hearing countless hateful insults and slurs, we were rushed at by a group yelling, trying to intimidate us. The police were there to step in and pulled Max and me back about 50 feet, as they felt it was necessary in order to protect us. This anti-Semitism is happening in our town. It happened right here where we are standing today. Our friends, neighbors, classmates, and coworkers of every race and religion cannot allow this to happen. We need to stand together to fight anti-Semitism. It is hate. That is all it is. For this, I urge my schoolmates and their parents, some of whom are my very close friends, to educate themselves on these topics, not just blindly follow anti-Semites. I welcome and encourage you to engage me in conversation and ask questions about Judaism in America. Stand up for your fellow Jewish schoolmates and friends. We are the first to stand with you at every turn. In the words of the great civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Hayden Meja. Last week, I graduated from Princeton Day School. I am also a graduate of the 2019-2020 American Jewish Committee Leaders for Tomorrow program. I am so grateful and honored to be given the opportunity to speak today to give a youth perspective on anti-Semitism in today's world. Like most members of my generation, we Gen Zers gain our perspective on everything through the lens of social media. Anti-Semitism and hate are no exceptions. I spend more time than I'd care to admit staring at my phone screen, and more I see terrifying things staring back at me. Some people I admire using anti-Semitic slurs, promoting false conspiracies about Jews or the media, and much, much more. I've come to understand that there's a vicious cycle to all of this. Step 1. A comedian, athlete, artist, celebrity, or politician says something ignorant or hateful about Jews on social media. Step 2. Their millions of loyal followers blindly retweet, repost, share, like, and promote this nonsense, causing a cacophony of Jew hate. Step 3. Non-Jews say very little, if anything at all. Step 4. It's left to us, the Jewish Gen Zers of social media, to try to stand up to millions of people through a tiny screen to defend ourselves. Step 5. We dip into our notes apps using our pre-written defense mechanisms to try to make our peers understand why what they're saying is so damaging and wrong. Sometimes that'll do the trick. Either that or we go to step 6, the most frustrating of all. Step 6. They argue or defend themselves, invalidating our outcries and leaving us feeling like the other of our own closest communities. Step 7, repeat. My friends and I are really tired of this cycle. Social media is advertised as a fun, silly, filter-filled space to connect with your friends and watch stupid dog and cat videos. Now we're here, defending our existence to strangers and, worse, to our friends. As exhausting as it is, we must fulfill our role as the upstanders. The alternative is silence, which is so much worse. But I think rather than playing whack-a-mole with the anti-Semitic content delivered through social media, it's time to take a more proactive approach. Education is one of the most powerful tools in the world. It's up to us to speak out and stand against anti-Semitism. Not one of us could do it alone, but that's why we're here together today. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I want to truly thank you all for being here this afternoon. My name is Seth Wolenski, and I'm a rising senior at Princeton University and vice president of the Center for Jewish Life on campus. I grew up in the suburbs of Boston, where you could stop 1 in 3 strangers on the street and play an endless game of Jewish geography. There were sponsored trips to Israel everywhere, whether it be through Jewish day schools, youth groups, or shuls. During my first few years at Princeton, I spent many late nights discussing Israel and domestic anti-Semitism, but it wasn't until recently that these conversations began taking place outside of my Jewish circles. In the past few weeks, I have been appalled by how many people, ranging from students on campus to legislators in Washington, would in one breath chastise anti-minority rhetoric and in the next spew anti-Semitic tropes in place of a civil critique of Israel. What disheartened me most was seeing those very same people, just a few days later, put forth the same message against anti-Semitism that brings us here today, naive to the fact that their own messaging propagated the spike in anti-Semitism that we have experienced in the past few weeks. As we celebrated our final Shabbat on campus on the lawn of the CJL, anti-Semitic shouts were heard from a passing car. A similar outburst occurred on campus during commencement weekend just a few days later. There is no doubt in my mind these actions stem from the recent rhetoric on campus and in the media. The leadership of the CJL, Princeton's Hillel, issued a statement condemning these actions and emphasized that anti-Semitism has seeped its way into campus conversations about Israel and beyond. In a published statement, President Eisgruber of Princeton University reiterated the importance of maintaining civil discourse in the intense discussions taking place at Princeton about Israel and Palestine, urging that we must stand steadfastly against anti-Semitism in all forms of racism, discrimination, and intolerance. Every year, when talking to incoming Jewish freshmen, one question we are always asked is, do you feel safe being Jewish on campus? Never before has this question elicited so much hesitation from Jewish Princeton students. When I think about the campus our incoming freshmen will walk into this fall, I hope to see a student body that is more open and patient than what I have experienced in these past few weeks. Instead of bickering on social media, I hope to see more late-night, heart-to-heart discussions between those who deeply disagree. I hope students will be okay with being persuaded and changing their stance on issues. And finally, I hope students will be comfortable being challenged with different viewpoints, even if it does lead to some discomfort at times. But this can only happen with patience and respectful language devoid of anti-Semitism. It is only through tough and oftentimes emotional conversations that we can truly reevaluate our own convictions and beliefs. After all, communal learning through even-handed dialogue is what college and high school is all about. It is my wish that when we return to classes in the fall, temperatures will be lower, civil discourse will prevail over impulsive remarks, and Kabbalat Shabbat services will once again be a highlight of the week for all Jewish students. But until that happens, we must continue to stand up in defense of open conversation, in defense of Israel, and in defense of ourselves. Thank you.
Wow. See, she was. You know, I always remember Johnny Carson saying you never want to follow children on the show, and I can see why. These three students were amazing. And come on, let's louder than that. Come on. So I want to pick up a little bit about what they said and what Lynn said. The bottom line is we're here to help show support for our children, who, as you heard through the three speeches, are just really being bombarded at every front about anti-Semitism. And why we wanted to hold this today is to show them they're not alone, to show them that we support them, to show them, as people said already, we're a community, Jewish and non-Jewish, who believe, stand against anti-Semitism, stand against hate, and we appreciate everybody coming out today. But this is just a first step for us. We're looking to take this program and this type of stand to start to advocate and educate for not only the students in their schools and the community, but also us as a community as a whole. And to do that, we want to do lots of programming, we want to do a lot of outreach. And what we're asking people today to do is to look at some signs that will be going around and in back of me that tells you text to donate. And we hope today, or if you put the information in your phone, you do it when you're home. And the number is 609-806-5883. Let me do that one more time so people can take their phone out and put it into their messaging. 609-806-5883. All you have to do is when you get there, either if it's here or at home, you'll be able to text the amount you wish to donate. There will be a link for you to click and then to put in your information. Again, as I said, this is just a start. We're going to hear some more speakers. You're going to hear why we need to do this. But this is a great start, and we're glad you're here, and we want to thank you again. One more time, 609-806-5883. After the speeches, you'll be able to come up here and look at the number again. With that said, I'd like to introduce the Mayor of Princeton, Mark Frieda.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome, everyone. Glad to join you today, and I'm honored to be asked to speak to you for just a couple minutes. So let's just be real clear. Hate in any form is just wrong. So hate against anyone, any religion, any group of people, any political views. We need to all understand that we're all individuals, and we should treat each other as individuals. We all deserve respect. We all deserve to be looked at and considered for what we are. Stereotypes, grouping people together, again, behavior that is not acceptable. And I think it's something we strive for hard in Princeton not to tolerate, but we need to send the message, and that lack of toleration for that, kind of funny that I'm saying lack of toleration, sorry, but not tolerating hate, discrimination, prejudice. These are all wrong, and these do not help our world. They do not help any of us. Again, we're all human. We're all here to do our best, to strive to do our best, and we want to give each other that opportunity. So I just want to be clear, anti-Semitism is wrong. We do not tolerate it. We will never endorse it. We will never do anything to encourage it. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you briefly. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Mayor Frieda, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for those words. Our next speaker is Wayne D'Angelo, a Princeton councilman. Please welcome Wayne D'Angelo to the mic.
Got to raise the mic here. I'm a little taller than the rest. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. Again, my name is Wayne D'Angelo, and I'm on the legislature in the General Assembly in District 14, which is Hamilton Township up through Middlesex County. And what's a dashingly handsome redhead doing here? Letting you know that this Irish Italian Catholic stands in support with you against hatred. Right? I saw a lot of signs out there. I'm standing with my Jewish neighbor. I'm campaigning with my Jewish senator, Linda Greenstein. Right? She stands by me and what I do, and I stand by her, and I stand with you. I can tell you right now, the state of New Jersey is making sure that we stomp out hate everywhere we possibly can. We're stopping bullying, we're stopping anti-Semitism, we're stopping anti-hate wherever we possibly can. And that's our goal. It's fantastic to see what I'm seeing out here. If you can see the group, this massive rally that I'm seeing through my eyes, it's fantastic. You all deserve a big round of applause. And to the kids, make the change. You guys are the change. Thank you.
Assemblyman, thank you so much for being with us. We stand with you as well. I'd like to introduce next our New Jersey State Senate Representative from the 14th District, Linda Greenstein.
And I'm really glad that my running mate, Wayne, who's my running mate of many years, got to speak and to talk to you, because we do get a lot of support on all of the things that we're trying to do here in the district. This is not my district, but it's right next door. You know, there are close to 550,000 Jewish people living in New Jersey. 550,000 individuals living under the fear and anxiety of anti-Semitic attacks. We don't think of it every day and every moment, but it's there. And 550,000 people that have to worry about verbal harassment, physical attacks, and the defacement of religious institutions. New Jersey remains the state with the second highest number of anti-Semitic incidents in the country, with nearly 300 incidents reported in 2020, making it the third highest year of anti-Semitic attacks in the state.
this amount of hate crimes and intolerance is striking. Even in school, places that are supposed to be safe spaces to learn and grow, our children experience this hatred. Anti-Semitic attacks have increased sharply in our schools. Instances where swastikas are drawn on school materials or where students are harassed for who they are. Our children deserve more. They deserve to be in a space where they don't have to live under fear and anxiety. This shows the amount of work left to be done to educate people, young people, about hate, bias, and stereotypes. Throughout the last 2 years, we've seen anti-Semitic attacks emerge through an online presence. And as many of us, if not all of us, know, that's one of the worst ways that it happens, through online, social media. Hateful social media posts and comments torment members of our community. Attacks in Jersey City and Pittsburgh demonstrate that anti-Semitic crimes are becoming more violent. With these recent trends of anti-Semitic hate, we must rededicate ourselves to a united fight against hatred and prejudice. I used to work many, many years ago for the Anti-Defamation League, and I really got to see and experience firsthand the degree of hatred that exists. And I was really shocked at that time to learn that New Jersey was one of the major states when it came to these groups. Again, I really didn't realize that New Jersey was in that place, but we really are. This is not just a Jewish problem, it's an American problem. We need every single person to speak out and stand up against anti-Semitism. We're doing, just last point, we're doing a lot in the legislature, hearing all sorts of bills and other things and trying to work on this issue. If any of you ever have any ideas, give us a call. We're always open to that, and we're trying to do what we can to contribute to solving the problem. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, please join me in welcoming to the stage my very good friend and one of our community's longest-serving rabbis, Rabbi Jay Kornsgold from Bethel Synagogue in East Windsor.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you to the Jewish Federation, Princeton Mercer Bucks, for putting together this evening's rally. And thank you all for being here and joining together. In a recent ADL report, alarm in the Jewish community is soaring, along with a 115% rise in anti-Semitic incidents since the beginning of the conflict between Israel and Hamas compared to the same dates last year. The new survey reveals that 60% of American Jews have personally witnessed anti-Semitic behavior or comments in recent weeks, and over 40% feel more concerned about personal safety now than they did in early May when the conflict began. This is particularly upsetting, but as one who is the son of Holocaust survivors, both my parents survived the Holocaust. My mother came here as a young girl at 9 years old. Father came here at 16 after losing many members of their family, and taught us the importance and the promise of America. And these anti-Semitic incidents seem to tell us that this is not the promise of America that my parents came to and that I grew up in. Almost 3 weeks ago, I had my first grandchild. And it's been giving me a lot of thought during these last almost 3 weeks about what kind of place I want him to grow up in. Our Jewish tradition teaches, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. Our prayers speak about loving peace, pursuing peace, and loving your fellow creatures. Our job is to break down the barriers between one another and to embrace one another. And we gather here today to say that this is enough. Anti-Semitism can never be acceptable, no matter what the situation is. And today we call upon our elected officials to not only speak out, but actually to take action against anti-Semitism and really to use the resources of the federal government to stop this despicable behavior. I think it's time that our elected officials from both parties stop worrying about the next election and stop playing politics and finally call anti-Semitism for what it is when it happens each and every day. And one more thing. If, as our young people were talking about earlier, and I thanked them, they were great, if you find something challenging that Israel is doing, it is not the fault of every Jew. Just like if you find something that the American government is doing that you don't like, it's not the fault of every American. My hope and my prayer is that by gathering here today and being together as a unified community, that we are sending a message that anti-Semitism has no place in this community, in this state, and in this country. And I have one little secret that I want to share with all of the anti-Semites out there. And that is that our history shows that we were here yesterday, we're here today, we will be here tomorrow, and we will continue to be here no matter what they try to do, no matter what they say, no matter what they do. Am Yisrael Chai. May the Jewish people continue to live, continue to prosper, and continue to help make this world a better place to live for all of God's children. Thank you.
Rabbi, as always, thank you for those really inspiring words. And as I just can't help myself for a second. As a Jewish mom, I saw there was someone walking around with a sign that said nice Jewish girl and another person walking around with a sign that said nice Jewish boy. So somebody should introduce them to one another. Oh, sorry. They're brother and sister, not good. Hand the sign to a friend. Okay, we are coming up on our last speaker, but before I introduce him, I just want to say one thing to follow up what Rabbi Kornsgold shared with us, and that is we are really fortunate as citizens of the United States of America to be able to come together and rally in this way and have our voices heard in a community. I think that it should not go without saying that we appreciate, in addition, being citizens of the United States of America. Our final speaker tonight is my good friend and my AJC partner, Rabbi David Levy, Executive Director of the AJC New Jersey office.
So I want to tell you, going last means two things. First of all, y'all are done after I finish. And secondly, everything that everyone said so far, I get to say ditto. But what I want to do is make this a little more personal. We've had all the stories, all the statistics. I want to tell you a personal story. Some of you have heard, some of you haven't. My father was a Holocaust survivor who ultimately came to the United States with his parents in 1947. And America represented for him a place of safety, a place of security, and a place of opportunity, a place where the only limits he had were the limits that he would place on himself. And he was also a proud and devoted Jew who taught us, his children, never to forget the lessons of history and to take responsibility for the security of our fellow Jews. But I'll tell you, he never fooled himself. He never said it could never happen here. And yet he was a great optimist. And I think he could never truly picture what happened to his family in Germany happening here. He passed away 4 years ago this summer. My wife and I were down in Florida for Shiva. And at the end of Shiva, we got on a plane to come back to New Jersey. And we did what everybody does when you're sitting on a plane waiting for it to take off. What do? You reach in your pocket, right? Pull out your phone because soon they're going to tell you to turn it off, and you try to see what's going on, who texted you. We had been out of touch, Shiva. We hadn't paid attention to anything. Well, what had happened that day? Charlottesville. I finished Shiva for my father, who was a survivor, to look at my phone and see Charlottesville and see Jews shall not replace us and see the ugliness of marchers holding torches with anger on their faces. And I turned to my wife and I said, I am so glad my father didn't live to see this. That's how I ended Shiva. And then what came next? My wife and I, for our anniversary, had this wonderful trip to Spain, and we were walking the beach of Marbella when our phones started going nuts. And that was Pittsburgh. And she turned to me and said, I'm glad your dad didn't see this. And then came Poway. And we thought the same thing. Thank God he didn't live to see this. And then came Jersey City. And once again, thank God he didn't live to see this. And then we got to this past year. And what have we seen this past year? We've seen a year in which 1 in 3 Jewish Americans tell us that they avoid places or situations because they are fearful. Because they're fearful for their security, they literally are avoiding going some places here in America. And what else have we seen? We've seen that 1 in 4 Jews report to us that during the last year, they have hidden their Judaism for fear of their safety. And it's happened right here in Princeton. My good friend Hayden mentioned our Leaders for Tomorrow program that we run, a program for rising juniors and seniors. And please, if you are a rising junior and senior, we'd love to have you to learn about how to be Jewish leaders on campus. And we asked our 20 students, have you ever hidden your Judaism for fear of your safety? How many do you think, just guess, how many of them said, yeah, I've hidden my Judaism? Almost 16. And the others maybe weren't telling me. But I want to tell you one story I heard from one young man, an Orthodox Jew who wears a kippah all the time, except when he gets in the car to drive somewhere. He said to me, Rabbi, I have my kippah and I put it away when I'm driving because I don't know if my car breaks down somewhere and someone sees me with a kippah, if that's going to be safe. How awful is that? How shattering is that? We have seen a rise in real-world anti-Semitism. We've seen physical attacks on Jews. We've seen a rise in anti-Semitic rhetoric on the streets, among politicians and influencers, in our schools and on campus. And we have seen a rise in online anti-Semitism and the targeting of Jews on Facebook, on Twitter, and especially our young people on Instagram. And I think if we asked every young person here who's on Instagram, have you seen anything anti-Semitic, all of you would raise your hand. And so I don't say anymore, I'm glad he didn't live to see this moment. I will never say that again, because I began to think, what would my dad do if he were here? What would he say if he were here? And my father would say, go out, take action, stand up, fight this evil. He would say, it's our job to make America be true to its promise, the promise that we all came here for. And so to that end, I want to share just a few notes that are very similar to what has been said before. But these were some of, in an abbreviated way, the teachings of one of our organization's leader, David Harris, who I really am proud to call my teacher, as many of you are. He wrote that there are some things that we need to do. So as we leave this rally, we leave it not saying, great, I went to a rally, I did what I needed to do, the job is done. Rather, I need you to say, I went to a rally and it was a beginning. That today is the first step and not the last step. And so, as we've already been told, we need to talk to our friends and make sure they understand that anti-Semitism is not a Jewish problem. It's a human problem. It's a problem for the entire world. Assaults on Jews are not just assaults on Jews, but as David Harris has said, they are assaults on the very fabric and fiber of America's pluralistic society. In other words, when you attack Jews, you're attacking everyone. It is essential for us to recognize that anti-Semitism doesn't just come from one direction. There is anti-Semitism on the left. There is anti-Semitism on the right. There is anti-Semitism that comes at us from those who claim to speak in the name of a religion. And all of them are wrong, and we need to keep our eyes open in every direction. And we need our elected officials to be held accountable for their words. And we need them to hold their fellow officials accountable for their words. We have so many great allies among our political leaders, but we need them to speak out when their fellow leaders verge into anti-Semitism. And we need our institutions to be equally accountable. Our children should be able to go to school. Our children should be able to go to college. Our children should be able to go wherever they wish to congregate without worrying about being targets of hate and discrimination. We must demand that our schools and our colleges stand with our students. And we need to engage partners. Friends, we cannot do this alone. We need many, many more partners. We need our friends in the Christian community, in the Black community, in the Hindu community, in the Asian community. We need to join together. We need to say, just as we stand with you, stand with us. And finally, we've had so much focus on our young people. And this is important for our young people, but it's also important for every single one of us. The greatest thing we can do to fight anti-Semitism is to show Jewish pride. This is not a time to hide. This is not a day for Marrano Jews. This is a day to openly affirm our identity, to proudly wear that Jewish star, to proudly wear that mezuzah, to proudly wear that kippah, to proudly wear that t-shirt that you got from camp 2 years ago. Hopefully you'll get another one this year. To stand up and say not only am I Jewish and proud, but every social media post that has to do with your Jewish identity should be hashtag Jewish and proud. Let the world know that though the haters may stand in front of us, we stand right up to them in pride. So let me end this with one last note. My father, when he passed away, he was ill towards the end. He knew he was passing. He wrote letters to each one of his children. And he wrote a note to me about my involvement in the Jewish community. He wrote a note to me talking about when I was living in Israel and he came to visit and we strolled together down to the old city. He wrote a note to me about his pride in what I was doing today. And then he signed it, Am Yisrael Chai. If we do nothing else today, let us join together loudly and proudly and join with me and say, Am Yisrael Chai. May our people continue to live. Thank you.
I learned my lesson. I'm following an adult now and not children. But what I get to tell you is we want to thank you again for turning out. This was a great turnout, but it's not over yet. We have Frosties that we're going to be serving throughout the crowd. We're going to have music being played up till 7 o'clock, and we want people just to hang out and schmooze. And we want to thank for the Frosty our local Wendy's providing them for us. So look for it in the crowd. Thank you again. Stay and schmooze.
רבות אברהם הזה בדרך, אני הולך עם ראש למעלה, כל אחד הוא בנו בת של מלך, כך היה